Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Flavor of the Week, brought to you by Banditos, fresh, made daily. In Flavor of the Week, Kyle sits down with one of our local priests over 4 different episodes to sample variations of a favorite food or drink while they discuss the ins and outs of life as a priest.
This is Kyle Hyman. Welcome to Flavor of the Week, Part 1 with Father David Violi. I am here in Bluffton, in the rectory. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming out, Kyle.
Yeah. I stopped at one of the local bakeries, a little bit of a legend around here. Yes. Of course, they're donuts or what everybody goes for, but I tried to think, what is something that maybe Father David hasn't had yet, or just get a variety of things. So I got a cherry strudel, a chocolate eclair, caramel iced cream filled donut. That's one of my favorites. So
now I see how this works.
Yeah. And then I got a cupcake, and I got the chocolate cake with vanilla icing.
There we go.
So any of these sound like a good first try here?
I think we got to try the cupcake since, that's a good breakfast food.
Yes. All right. So here, chocolate cake, vanilla ice cream. What would be your go-to cake flavor?
So that's a difficult question. Marble. I'll go with marble.
Marble cake. So chocolate and vanilla mixed together. Which kind of icing, though?
Vanilla. The chocolate would just be too overpowering.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm halfway there with the chocolate and vanilla icing. Pretty good. Yeah. What you'd expect?
The frosting has more of like an eclair flavor. I don't know if it's the vanilla, but it feels like it's something that might be used in a donut as well, even though this is a cupcake, but it's very good.
So, Father David, let's start with some background here. Before seminary, before priesthood, what was your family life growing up, and maybe school situation, faith? Was that important when you were a kid?
Yeah, so I grew up in Elkhart, Indiana, and then also Granger when I was in high school.
Okay.
And then I'm the last of 4 children. Actually, no, I'm currently the third because I'm a twin.
Okay.
And my twin sister every so often feels that we need to switch places so she can be the younger one. So I think right now I'm the third of 4.
Okay.
Which is very important because at Christmas, when we get together for our family Christmas, we open presents based on age. So she kind of tricked me. She got to open first this year, I think.
Okay.
We're all pretty close together. And we grew up in Elkhart. We lived there up through my high school time. And then when I was in high school, we moved out towards Granger. But I went to St. Thomas the Apostle in Elkhart. I know Father Jason Freiberger's there now. Went through the school there, went to Marian High School in Mishawaka. We had grown up a bit and moved out towards Granger. When I was in high school, we started going to St. Pius X, and that was my home parish when I was ordained a priest. And so that was great. I was able to celebrate my first Mass there in the old church just before the new church was completed. Yeah, so after high school, I went to Purdue. I was there for 4 years. I have a degree in biology. And really that was kind of I say for vocations, every priest story is different. It's one of those interesting things where when you're a seminarian, you're asked all the time, what's your vocation story? That's what you're talking about. But after we're a priest, we generally don't get asked too much because now you're a priest. You're a seminarian, the focus, you're moving towards priesthood every once in a while. How'd you get here?
Yeah.
Once you're there, though, there's
just another
less
priest.
Questions. Yeah. Well, it's old hat at that point. It's old hat. So my story really started, the faith was important in my family. We went to Mass every Sunday. We were in the Catholic schools. I think that was really important in my vocation. I saw the priest often then.
Okay.
And I remember our priest growing up.
Who was that?
We had a few different ones. So when I was a little baby, we had Father Derek Schneed and Father Steve Kolchin. Father Steve left St. Thomas and came here as pastor. And so it was kind of neat to come here and see his picture on the wall of pastors there.
So you're kind of following him around.
Yeah. I always told him, I said, I was 3 years old when he left. And I said, I don't necessarily remember you, but I remember the dog because Father Derek had a dog and Father Steve would walk him around.
Okay.
So for a 3-year-old, of course, I remember the dog.
Right.
And then we had Father Richard Heyer and Father Tom Ryan. And so Father Richard Heyer, God rest him, he passed away just a few years ago. He was there most of the time while I was growing up. And then Father Tom Ryan was a priest, a missionary from Ireland who was with us for many years, both a very wonderful and holy priest. And then we had Father Bill Sullivan, who followed Father Richard. After that, that's when we moved towards Granger when we were in high school. And so Father Bill was there for many years. And same thing, a very wonderful, holy man. It's always fun now because I see him at the Y. I'll sometimes go up and swim at one of the Ys in Fort Wayne with another priest, and we'll run into him. And so it's an interesting dynamic change where this is the priest you knew growing up.
Right.
And now, he's a brother.
Right.
And so it's such a, interesting change. And then when we were at St. Pius, Father Bill Schooler, who's still there, of course, and just seeing these men living holy and happy lives. Priesthood was normal for me. The same thing being in the Catholic schools. My mother volunteered there a lot, so we'd go there often, and we'd see the priests. They'd pop in, they'd be happy. And so that was something that it always seemed normal. And so for me, I had, I say 4 jobs I considered. I thought about being a biologist. I thought about being a priest. I thought about being a lawyer. And I thought about being a race car driver. And I always say somehow in life, I've kind of hit all 4.
Those are the 4 that everybody thinks about. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you mentioned now you're a brother priest with these other priests. Do you feel like a peer with them, or do you still feel like there's almost like a mentoring system, or that they're more priests than you are, or something like that? Do you feel like there's different levels of?
It's a bit of both. Okay. It's interesting because it's, as any relationship, as it matures and changes, it's doing exactly that. It's changing. So I've told some priests I can never call them by their first name. I'll always call them father, when we're in private, because they're father to me. Because I grew up with them, and that's who they are. They have that fatherly role, that priestly role in my life. But at the same time, now we have a collegiality. And so I know if I have questions, here as a new pastor, I'll call them. One of my brother priests is my mentor. And so I meet with him every couple of months and just talk about how everything's going in the parish and so on. Having a priest as a spiritual director, all of these different dynamics. It's such an interesting relationship. I always think back to Monsignor Selzer. Monsignor was at St. Charles for, I believe, 3 decades, and God rest him. He would always call us father when we were seminarians, and he would look at it and say, Father, and he would say he did that because we had to get used to it, because people would be calling us father when we were ordained. And I remember when he passed, I was a priest then, just a few years ago, and I was able to be there for the funeral. Monsignor was about 50 years my senior, and how amazing it was to say that I was bearing my brother. And so just a different dynamic. I had spent a summer with him, and he was just a man who was very joyous and enjoyed priestly fraternity. And so he always drew priests to himself to get together, to gather, to have that time, because that's so necessary for us to be with our brothers. And so I always thought that was kind of that's kind of the dynamic. He was a man who was a mentor. I studied under him. He was a man who was a friend. And then he was a man who was a brother. And so I could truly say that at the funeral, even though we were 50 years apart, he was my brother. And it was one of the most beautiful things. I can barely walk into that church now without choking up, because at the end of a priest's funeral, as the casket is being carried out, the brothers gathered, sing the Salve. And I said, Monsignor didn't have much family, and so the presbyterate was his family. And so to have all of those priests there at the funeral, and for us to sing as his body was carried out, was just really moving, really touching. I've done that, as I said, as well for my childhood pastor, Father Richard. And just, that great honor to have known these men and to, as I said, see them in so many different lights, as a teacher, as a mentor, as a father, as a brother. And so I think we have all of those dynamics in our different priests. Is we see that, and we see that in them. In one sense, we're brothers. In another sense, there's so much I can still learn from them.
Sure. So when discerning between priesthood, biologist, lawyer, and race car driver, were you sold on that was your vocation, that was your calling, was to go into biology? Or were you kind of saying, I'm still thinking about the priesthood, but let's do this for now? Yeah,
so I had just a little more on my story. When I was in graduated 8th grade, I was in an accident going into high school. I was practicing for football, and while weightlifting, I broke a disc in my back.
Oh, wow.
So I was actually paralyzed and had to have surgery.
Really?
Yeah, a long time of recovery. But one of the beautiful things even in that time was the priest, Father Bill Sullivan, came and anointed me. Father Tom Ryan would come and visit in the hospital. Father Dan Scheidt would come and visit. And so just to, again, see them, with my family and with my friends, that care that they showed and just that great beauty. So that's something that really touched me. And part of it was I did fall away for a bit because I was angry. Just having to go through that pain and that suffering. But what I saw then, as I really looked back on it, was the beauty of it and saying just to see how God worked even in that time. I was thinking, where are you? But looking back then, you're right here. You're here at every moment in my family and the great love that my family showed me, in the love of our friends, of the school, of the priest. Mm-hmm. And so that really hit me, and I had a bit of a reversion back to the faith.
Okay.
But so going into that time in high school, then we're starting to decide careers and all that. And so I thought about priesthood. I had a chance to meet Monsignor Gaelic, and so I was interested in it, but I didn't know how to do it. I had kind of this yearning, but I also loved biology. I loved what I was learning. I loved some of the research I was participating in at that time. And so I kind of told the Lord, I don't really know. So I'm going to go to Purdue. I was accepted at Purdue. And I said, I'm going to go there and I'm going to study biology. But if after 4 years, I still have that yearning, then I'll follow it. Uh-huh. And by my third year at Purdue, I kind of knew.
Okay.
And so I started moving towards it. I actually applied for the diocese in May of my junior year. That was right when Bishop Darcy had announced his retirement.
Oh, okay.
And that Bishop Rhodes then would be coming in. Everything was kind of frozen for a bit. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of like, I haven't heard anything. So for several months, I'm assuming. And then I got a call. It said, Bishop Rhodes would like to meet with you. So it was the first time I was ever in Fort Wayne. And drove from Lafayette down to Fort Wayne, February 6th, St. Paul Miki and companions.
Okay.
It was a blinding snowstorm, and I had a wonderful meeting with him. We had a chance to chat for about an hour. I got to hear about the good things, and I had 6 wonderful years at the Mount. Mm-hmm. It was that I loved what I did. I worked in a research lab while I was in college. I would say in biology, I saw the how things worked, mm-hmm. and theology is the why they work. And so I loved what I did. God was still touching my heart and saying, though you love what you're doing, you're called to something even greater. And so I entered into the seminary. Of my roommates that year, 2 of us are priests now, and the third is at Mount St. Mary Seminary.
Okay.
But, it's just interesting how all of that kind of drew to the same thing, same thing. Some of our good friends, some are married now and have families. Some are in religious life. Mm-hmm. Some are sisters, some are brothers. And so it's just that beautiful collection of people in that just community that can draw together in the church.
Yeah. I've got so many follow-up questions, but we're out of time for this one. How do you think this chocolate cupcake is working out here?
I think it's pretty good.
What would you 1 to 10? What do you think?
For a breakfast food? Probably a 10. It's going to be hard to top it. It's going to be hard, but we're going to have to try. We just have to.
That's very good.
We have to.
Now my mouth is full of cake.
Thank you for listening to Flavor of the Week.
All right. Coming up, we've got 3 more pastries and also 3 more conversations with Father David Violi on Flavor of the Week.